Howdy.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. My name is Scott Ryan. I am the author of The Last Decade of Cinema, 25 unique films from the 90s, and I'm excited to be here to wake you up and get your day going.
The city of New York, Boricua from the Bronx.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I gotta ask you, based on something, because I don't want to forget, what's the deal with the superhero films, bro? I gotta ask you that. That line stood out to me. And by the way, I respect your right to not like them. You know,
Good,
but
that's
but does it go back to the 90s? Like even like the old films or hit me with
no,
it.
well, first of all, yeah, the opening line of the book is, I won't blame you for liking superheroes movies if you don't blame me for not liking them. So we're already good. We're already here. I absolutely loved Batman in 1989. I stood in a line so long that I didn't get in the first show, and I stood in line while the Batman played to get in the second one. Do you remember having to do that? Are you old enough to have stood in a line for a movie?
I am, but I never did it. You know, you know what I mean? Like I never did that. Like I didn't care about anything enough to stand for a line, but I definitely was around.
So you probably saw Batman with Jack Nicholson as the Joker and loved Batman, right?
Oh yeah, well, this is Michael Keaton, right? Michael
Michael Keaton's
Keaton.
Batman, yeah. It
I mean,
was
I
great.
can't remember a damn thing about it, but I definitely saw them. You know,
Uh-huh. So I loved Batman. I loved Spider-Man in 2002.
was
But
that McGuire?
now that was Tobey
Okay,
Maguire.
okay.
But then it became Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, and then Spider-Man Universe, and Spider-Man goes to the mall, and Spider-Man gets his driver's license, and Spider-Man rides a boat. And I felt like I had seen it. Like, couldn't we see something else? Possibly, maybe. And Batman, this guy's Batman, that guy's Batman, and everyone has to be Batman. I'm not sure about this. So my thing is, in the 90s, there was different movies. You didn't just have one movie. Every movie wasn't exactly the same. They were all different. And so that's what my book is pointing out, that there were options for everyone. You could have superhero movies. There were Batman movies in the
Right,
90s,
right, right.
but that wasn't every single movie.
That whole Infinity Gauntlet saga, I enjoyed. And then it just got crappy, up until now where we got Deadpool and Logan coming out. I'm looking forward to that. Wolverine.
Uh-huh.
That I want to see.
You wouldn't wait in line for it, but you'd
Uh,
see it.
yeah, no, I ordered it in advance, but I wouldn't stand online. No, I don't do that, like there's nothing I care enough about to stand online for, you know what I mean?
But back in the day, movies actually were worth waiting for. There's so much online. You got your phone, you got everything on the internet. In the 90s, you pretty much had
Right,
TV and a couple films that came out. And
right.
there wasn't even a new film every week. It was a couple times a month. So
And honestly, if I think about it, I'm trying to think back. I'm trying to go back in the archives of suppressed the memories and stuff. I'm pretty sure that I at some point did stand in line for a film.
I did that for E.T. We had to
Okay.
stand in line for all three Star Wars movies, the original ones, because that
Hmm.
was just how it was. There weren't a bunch of theaters showing the same movie. I mean, it just didn't work that way back in the day.
Right, right. So your book is about the 25 like top greatest 90s films. Are you comfortable saying which would be your number one? If you had to pick one film from the 90s that you would say, hey, everybody should watch this.
I mean, I think it's Pulp Fiction. I
Oh,
think Pulp Fiction changed cinema and changed everything. And I sort of say in the book that you can kind of split the 90s in before Pulp Fiction and after Pulp Fiction. Have you seen that one?
I did. And I remember that one. Elaborate on that. I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed the film. I'm just curious how that one is the one that you chose. What are the elements there that create that?
Sure. I mean, I think it was one of the first films that was told out of order for a purpose. Everyone talked about how John Travolta dies in the middle of the movie. Bruce Willis shoots him in the middle of the movie, which is very shocking. You don't normally kill the star of the movie in the middle.
Hmm.
But then of course the time leaps back and then he's alive and he's in the end of the movie as well. So he is in the whole movie, but the first time you see it, you're like, what the heck? John Travolta isn't going to be in the rest of this film. And the other thing is it's a movie of all criminals. And up to that point, there hadn't really been a movie that didn't have a good guy. You know, now with The Sopranos or Breaking Bad and things like that, we're very used to watching criminals being the
Hmm.
stars of films. But in the 90s, that was still just coming up. And a lot of that came from Quentin Tarantino, where he developed these characters that are awful people, but we love them. And we're kind of rooting for them to get away with murder. And, you know, there's a scene with Samuel Jackson and John Travolta where they're just driving in the car and there's a guy in the back seat and Travolta turns around to talk to him and they hit a bump and he blows the guy's head off. And it's funny, you laugh, like you just, you know, and that wasn't what was happening in movies. In the 80s, it was all feel good and happy endings and Ferris Bueller's Day Off and, you know, The Three Amigos. It's just very fun based with all movies have a happy ending. And
Right.
here we're laughing at them picking brains out of the back seat of a car. And that sort of changed the morality of cinema.
That's a pretty good breakdown. And it makes sense, you know. I didn't even realize that, you know, the anti-hero thing, and I didn't even connect that, but that you actually explained it in a way where I saw something that I hadn't, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like I never caught that, but it makes sense.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think it's hard for people going backwards to watch these films. You're just sort of used to some things. And then after that, every movie had to start with the end. And then they come back around and say, you know, 2 weeks earlier or whatever, which doesn't even happen in Pulp Fiction. There aren't things on the screen
Right.
that tells you that they went back in time or you're not telling the story in order. You have to figure it out for yourself, which already I enjoy. I want to go to a movie to think.
Yeah, yeah. That was a trippy movie on so many fronts. Like there was so much happening, and that scene is pretty hilarious.
It really is, but also it's horrible. This poor
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
gets his head blown off for no
yeah.
reason.
He wasn't even a bad dude. He's like, hey, what do you think? Oh, he just shoot his brains out. The crazy thing is that they're like so nonchalant about it. You know what I mean? Like they're like, why'd you
Yeah,
do that, dude? He's a nice guy. Like, hey, we hit a bump. He's gonna make it okay. That movie was something else, you know?
definitely. And also, what I talk about throughout the book is that there was nobody judging the artist for their art. Where now, if that happened in a movie, people would say, oh, that director is horrible, or why would that actor kill that other actor for no reason? If someone dies in a movie now, they have to kick a dog right before they die. So that way you don't feel bad that they died. They always show the bad guy doing something horrible to some little kid or something. So then you want him to die. But that isn't really how it works when you're a criminal. And it's just a movie. Guess what? That guy really didn't get his head blown off. He
Yeah,
was acting.
he's alive
He's
right
fine.
now.
Yeah,
And
he's fine.
you know, he's out there somewhere. Probably, well, let me not go dark. But yeah, he's out there. You know, he's out there doing his thing. I had something come up in my head. Whatever, it'll come back. That happens to me a
Yeah,
lot. I get
I
an idea,
understand.
we're kind of bouncing ideas all over the place, and then it's gone. Dude, would you consider, well, you're not really well, you were a superhero guy when it wasn't so, I guess, watered down. It sounds like you could appreciate them. Would you consider, and this is random, kind of out of left
Sure,
field, and you
sure.
know, would you consider yourself more, it's actually along these lines what we're talking about with Pulp Fiction and stuff, Daredevil or Punisher kind of guy?
I would say probably Daredevil because I do like a little bit of humor in
Let me
it. I think
let Daredevil always wants to put them in jail and like lock them up, and Punisher wants to eliminate them. Now, with that distinction, Punisher or
uh-huh.
Daredevil?
I mean, I think that it's more fun to watch The Punisher.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a more fun movie, but you could probably have a more interesting movie with the Daredevil because he has to follow some set of rules. That's the good idea between good guys and bad guys, is the bad guy doesn't have to follow the rules, but the good guy has to. And then you can have some moral dilemma within the character. I just ruined both movies for you, didn't I?
Not at all, not at all. Because I've always been a Punisher guy. You
Uh-huh.
know, well, think about it. And I don't want to drag you down the superhero thing, but
No,
since we're
let's
talking about,
drag me down.
well, it's also like it ties in with the transition from Pulp Fiction. That's what kind of triggered
Sure,
that in my
I can
head,
see that.
right? Like you see Batman, right? Let's say Batman, for instance, right?
Uh-huh.
Batman would never want to kill the Joker. He always wants to
Right.
lock him up, right? And then the Joker escapes, kills a gazillion people, and then
Hmm.
Batman has to do it all over again. From my
Right.
perspective, every person that died after the first Joker arrest is Batman's fault. Whereas, well, think about
Let's
it.
put Batman in jail. Let's
Eh,
get that
You know,
bastard in jail.
if Batman would have just gotten rid of this guy, all those
Yeah.
innocent people would still be alive,
Right.
right? Whereas the Punisher,
Hmm.
he puts them down and they stay down.
Yes.
So that's my thought process there, right? Like I can't stand these goody two shoes guys always trying to do the right thing, but in doing so, they cost more lives.
I mean, now I'm starting to think what a criminal Batman is. Freaking jerk out there of only
Chris.
worrying about his toys. You're coming up with a great idea for a superhero guy. And I think I saw it in Silence of the Lambs. It was Hannibal Lecter, right? He is the superhero you're looking for. He just eats people. You can't set him free if you eat him. Batman should eat the Joker. Boom, we solved it.
I'm not against that, bro.
I mean, it'd be pretty good. You'd stand
Not,
in line for that one.
I might have to stand in line for that. And he should do it in a way where the Joker's still alive while he's eating him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
That'll
it's
teach
just
him to
you
kill
want it to
people.
be fresh.
You
Nobody
want to
wants
blow
stale Joker.
hospitals up,
Yeah.
he's gonna eat them periodically and just, oh man, we went dark after all.
I'm pretty
Oh
sure
man.
that script is in development right now, so it's probably fine.
We'll see it soon enough. And
Yeah, it'll be.
they're probably picking up the audio from this right now and stealing it from us,
Oh, of course.
you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's gonna be a good one.
What got you into 90s films? Is that the era that you were like a teenager?
I was in
Or
my 20s and I worked at a
okay,
video store.
right, right.
So I started working at a video store in 1990, and so I watched so many of those films, but I hadn't seen them for years. And then during COVID, when you were locked in, I just started watching movies and I kept gravitating towards 90s movies.
Oh,
And that's what gave me the idea for the book. I thought, what if I watched a bunch of 90s films and then just talked about, because they seemed so brave and the plots were interesting and they kept tricking me. Where if I watch a movie now, like you say, we know that
predictable. Yeah.
Batman's gonna put Joker in jail and he's gonna break out and do it again. Now, if Batman would have eaten someone, I would have been like, I didn't see that coming.
That new Batman killed though. The new one with Pattinson, he killed. You know what I
So
mean?
there you
Like
go.
I was like, you know what? I think I can get down with this Batman,
Finally, a Batman for you.
I was like, I think I can get down with this guy. I used to like crap on Batman, but you got to give Batman his respect. Like for a guy with no powers, you know, he's been able to contain Superman, save Superman. I mean, because I've always been like, on the same type of concept. Excuse me. I always felt that if Superman could really wanted to, he could just end Batman. And
Yeah, I
people
mean,
always
why
say,
aren't
"Oh,
more of these
Batman will win."
superheroes killers? I see you have a theme here. But you know, not to spoil it with fact, but the Joker died in Michael Keaton's Batman. He actually falls off the building at the end of the movie. Batman doesn't save him. So, to be fair, Michael Keaton killed Jack Nicholson in the original Batman. It's just
I
he'd
have to
make
watch it
movies.
again because I had no recollection of that.
Yeah, he died
I
hanging
do,
off the big Gotham Tower or whatever, and he slips and Batman can't hold him. So it's
but does
just Warner
Batman make the
Brothers.
conscious decision to?
No, he doesn't put poison in his coffee, but he can't save him and he does die. It's just that even if you kill someone in a superhero movie, what's the difference? The executives are bringing them back the next movie. Batman could
He
eat
survives somehow.
them. Yeah, I mean, they just cast him with someone new and it doesn't matter.
How do you feel about the reboots
Oh, I
of
think
the
they're
old
horrible.
movies?
Like, I don't want to see a movie I've seen before. I want to see something totally original and new. That's what I'm looking for. This is something that I didn't think of and I can't predict.
Was Dirty Dancing was in the 80s? I
Dirty
can't remember.
Dancing was in the 80s, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the movies that I watched over and over and over and over when I was a kid. You
Yeah.
know, it was one of those. You ever see Heavenly Kid?
Heavenly Kid, sure.
That's
That's an
another
80s
one.
movie as well.
Yeah, that's another one that I guess I've watched more 80s movies during these down times than
Hmm.
90s.
Well,
And
the
I
80s movies were more feel good. You know, all the John Hughes movies, Uncle Buck, The Breakfast Club, all of those type
I don't think I've
movies.
ever seen The Breakfast Club or Little Elmo's or Saint Elmo's, whatever that one is, Saint
I think
Elmo's
it was
Fire or
Tickle Me
something.
Elmo. I think you're thinking of Tickle Me Elmo.
I do
You
love
know,
Elmo, by the way. I have an
oh, of
Elmo here.
course. My favorite was when he ate the Cookie Monster because he had it coming. And that monster's just going to be out getting people nonstop.
His harassment had to be put to an end.
Yeah. And
You
like
know,
Elmo finally did it. That was one of my favorite ones.
he turned a little purple instead of red.
Yeah. Well, you know, it happens.
Purple Elmo, then that's the one who eats. So your top film in the 90s was Pulp Fiction.
Most of them were good. That I watched a movie called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, and it was
Okay.
pretty bad.
Hmm.
And there was a movie called Falling Down with Michael Douglas
I recall
and Robert
that one.
Duvall.
Yeah, that
And
one I
it
remember.
had some good moments, but it was really cheesy. It had a lot of interesting, it sort of was like predicting what the internet was going to be and how mean we were going to be to each other and how we were starting to hate people that were different than us. But it also had like over the top policemen in it that it just wasn't very believable.
Hmm.
Most of the ones I watched, there was something different about every movie that you were like, I don't see that all the time. Like the Shawshank Redemption. Have you seen that? Like
Ooh,
that's a great one.
that is a phenomenal. One of the few that I've watched more than once. I don't
You can
watch
watch
many
it so
movies
many
more than
times.
once. Amazing film.
Yep,
Absolutely.
and I covered Goodfellas as well. Robert De Niro, a
Yeah.
great mafia movie, probably the best mafia movie. I love that one. And Terminator 2 is in the book. So I do action movies as well. It's not
Mm.
like these are all drama. Like the idea behind the book is these were movies that everyone was watching
Well,
and they
it
had
makes
something
sense.
to
Like
say.
back then, you didn't have all the options, right?
Right.
This is not the first time I've heard this because I asked one of my guests, what does it take to get another Brad Pitt or to get a Denzel? And it was the same belief. Well, now there's so much content that you don't have that one big blockbuster film that makes that big guy who's in every film or that woman who's in every single film. Now it's 20 films a night that come out and so you
Right.
never have those big, those big names, like it just doesn't happen.
Well, and Brad Pitt really was in a lot of these 90s movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy to me how many of these movies he was in. True Romance and Thelma and Louise, A River Runs Through It, Meet Joe Black. I mean, Brad Pitt made a ton of movies in the 90s, and Denzel is in the book with Malcolm X, which he's just like incredible in Malcolm X.
Was Interview with the Vampire 90s? Kind of feel like
Yeah,
it
that's
was.
another one. Interview with the Vampire. Brad Pitt was in that. I mean, he was in a ton of movies. It's crazy. And they're all very different. He's extremely different in it. You don't almost recognize him. I mean, of course, he's Brad Pitt, so you do. But he develops a completely different character in each
Yeah.
one. He's not playing the same person in every movie.
Yeah, he's one of my faves, like, in terms of that
Definitely.
era. And Interview with the Vampire was great. Uh, Queen of the Damned was horribly great. You know what I mean? Like it was so bad that I enjoyed it. I think they could have named that film anything else. You know,
I don't think I've seen that one. What is that, a
Queen.
vampire movie?
Well, it's in the Anne Rice Vampire
Oh, okay.
Chronicles. So it would have been the third book in the series. It's so disconnected from the true story, and so many things were changed that you could have just called this one, like woman vampire, powerful woman vampire, and it would have been fine. The problem that made the movie kind of irritate me is that they called it Queen of the Damned, and it didn't follow the book Queen of the Damned, you
Yeah,
know,
that always
you
is
know.
rough. You just can't
Um,
do that. You got to follow the
you
book.
know,
What's the point of making it? That
that's why I railed against the film, but I have
I
watched
think
it a few times. It's
it's
horribly good. You know what I mean? Like it's
right.
so bad that it's
Those,
like,
yeah, that's what movies can do as well. Sometimes you watch them because they're great, and sometimes you watch them because they're horrible.
well, you can't look away, you
Right.
know? I was 12 in 89 we established, right? Something like that, 12,
Yeah.
11.
I think
Um
that's what the paperwork says. Yes. Hmm.
so I couldn't really afford to go to the theater without the parents, until a little, maybe like the mid 90s, maybe then at that point I was old enough to do stuff by myself.
That's when it really becomes fun, and that's when movies, it's fun to go see the movies. I don't know if kids probably still don't do that. They probably could care less because they see movies all the time. It probably doesn't matter, but
Yeah, they're always available. It's wild because now there's so much stuff that I'll watch 5 movies in a row and then I won't remember anything about any of them.
yes,
What
indeed, sir.
what's your deal with 90s music? I guess those tie into movies too, right? Like what would have, you were in your
You know,
20s,
it's
like
interesting because I've just been starting to tweet out like my favorite soundtracks from
mm,
the 90s. I think Pulp Fiction has a great soundtrack. Lost Highway was a great soundtrack. Pretty Woman was one of the soundtracks I loved. That was part of the 90s as well as getting the soundtrack. You got a lot of really good music. Clueless, Empire Records, Sleepless in Seattle. I think all of those were movie soundtracks that were really, really good. I don't even know if that really happens anymore, where they like compile the popular bands at the moment to be in a
mm.
movie now. They probably hire one person to do all the songs.
Yeah, definitely with those big films, it seems to be that way. Orchestral type of shit. And you do hear some songs like they'll pick like one 90s song, like Batman used Something in the Way by Nirvana. They
Uh,
use that as their dark song to show the previews to. Yeah, and all of a sudden my son's listening to it, right? You
yeah,
know,
that's
and
good.
I'm like, dude, I've been rocking Nirvana since you were a baby, and you never listened to it. Now all of a sudden it's in a Batman movie and you're listening to In Utero. You say, that's the way it goes, pops.
Yep, that's right. It's
It's
any way you can get the next generation to listen to those things.
mm. What was your
But
favorite band in the 90s?
I really liked Alanis Morissette.
Okay.
She came out in 97. I always liked a girl with a guitar, so I liked Jewel and Melissa Etheridge, and I always liked a
Mm.
girl with a guitar.
I remember thinking how beautiful Jewel was, and her voice was just like mesmerizing. You know,
Yeah, I
she
mean, the 90s music, there was a bunch of different music too. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if someone does this with music. I don't know that I'm as knowledgeable about 90s music to do a sequel to the
oh
book on music, but What about
Yeah.
you? What was your favorite in the 90s?
I have to say Nirvana.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd have to say Nirvana because I mean that's what I listened to most back then, you know. Darkness and all. It resonated with
Right.
me. Like when Kurt
Sure.
Cobain killed himself, I went into such a dark place myself. Like um I had to start doing therapy because I was like, "Ooh, killing yourself sounds like a good idea." My childhood was kind of tough, and the 90s and that era was pretty rough because high school and junior high school were so violent. It was just violent, like there's so much violence, and that shaped
Sure.
me. And Cobain was kind of like my out, like I would listen to it and it would help me kind of just get off well, like I would use that music to kind of. And
Sure.
when he killed himself, I was just like, bro, like that's my escape has just been taken from me.
Did you
But
move on to liking the Foo Fighters then?
never really got into them. To me, it was like Nirvana, and then anything else is a
Is not.
sad
Sure.
attempt. You know what I mean? Like, although Grohl's thing was different. It wasn't like he was trying to do the Nirvana thing on his own. He was doing his own thing. You
Right.
know?
Definitely. Yeah. I
Yeah,
like them.
yeah, yeah. I can't remember that "Learn to Fly" song is pretty nice. Like he's got some good stuff. I just never. After that happened, I just kind of just pulled away from it altogether. Like,
I can
didn't
see that.
Pearl Jam couldn't fill the void. You know,
Right.
Pearl Jam couldn't do it. I mean, Green Day is fun band, but I do like
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I like Green Day too. But for me, I like Warning, I think is my favorite album by them. Or Minority, I forget what the name of the album is, but I don't know if that's a 90s one or not though. I might be in the early 2000s, I'm not sure. But
Be, you
yeah,
know,
they were good.
that whole
Well,
period is a blur.
well, it was a long time ago, that's for sure. So,
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
yeah, for sure.
I
It's
appreciate
good.
it.
It's
It was
good.
good to chat.
Yeah, it's good chatting with you, man.
Thank you. And if your listeners want to pick up The Last Decade of Cinema, it's out now. They can get it anywhere.
Very cool. All right, brother.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good
Yeah.
day.
You are listening to the NYC Talking podcast. www.nyctalking.com. Please like NYC Talking on Facebook. Please follow Angel R Talk on Twitter and Instagram. We are NYC Talking, the realest lifestyle blog ever. Thanks for listening.